Good evening, and welcome to the next installment of Meet the Leaders. I am your host, Jerry McPherson, Director of Economic Empowerment for the Greater Phoenix Urban League. Tonight's broadcast, we're going to be talking about the shifting demographics of the state of Arizona. That includes the recently completed census, as well as the redistricting process that is currently underway. This is an important topic that you need to be tuned into and pay close attention to and figure out how you can get engaged to help shape the future of Arizona. We have a phenomenal panel ahead of us. We'll be talking with Lacey Lofton from the U.S. Census, who is going to go over the results of the 2020 census to give you a clear idea of what and how Arizona has transformed over the past 10 years. We'll also have Marie Chapel Camacho from the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission, which is responsible for the redrawing of our electoral map. We'll also have Jevin Hodge, candidate for U.S. Congress, as well as Esty Amani, political activist. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce the president and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Urban League, George Dean. Take it away, George.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm George Dean, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Urban League, and I welcome you to the October edition of the Urban League's Meet the Leaders virtual presentation. As you are aware, every 10 years, the U.S. federal government conducts a census for the nation that provides useful official information on periodic enumeration of the U.S. population. It also tells us how we are living, education achievement, economically, unemployment and employment rates, how we are insured for health, how much money to go to local governments for services, roads, schools, etc. The U.S. conducted and completed the 2020 census last year, and we are going to discuss some of the findings in this session of Meet the Leaders. In addition, we're also going to talk about the implications of some of the findings, especially here in Arizona. Another part of the census also determines whether or not our state gets more or less representatives in Congress based on growth or decrease in the population. Many thought that because of the growth of population in Arizona that the state would get another congressional seat, but because of an undercount of the population, many people were not counted. That did not happen. In addition, the census completion means that there's a redrawing of congressional districts to be reflective of the shifting face of Arizona. Our panel tonight includes, and I want to give a personal thanks to each one of them, Jevin Hodge, Lacey Lofton, Marie Chapel Camacho, and Esty Amante. And with that, I will turn it back to Jerry and we will get this forum underway.
Thank you, George. And as always, thank you for your leadership to the Greater Phoenix community over the past 29 years. Before we get started into the broadcast, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you are familiar with the broadcast, then you know the rules of engagement. If you're new to it, I will ask you to each like, comment, and share, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Like, comment, and share. Spread the word. Let the word know that you're with us. We want to get as many people to this broadcast as possible. This may be the only opportunity that they hear some of this most pertinent information that we have to share today. A couple of other items that we wanted to make you aware of. If you are a member of the Greater Phoenix Urban League or just one of our supporters, followers, community partners, etc., we have our 57th annual Whitney M. Young Jr. Awards celebration. This will be happening virtual this year. You can find out more information at www.gphxul.org. It's acronym for Greater Phoenix Urban League, gphxul.org. If you are a small business owner out in the community, we will be launching our quarterly small business boot camp, which will be presented by GoDaddy and PayPal. It kicks off November 6th, and the topics will cover boosting your online social media presence, creating a website to help you succeed, optimizing the customer experience, and setting yourself up for growth and expansion. Visit bit.ly/gpool_bootcamps to register. And last but not least, the State of Black Arizona recently released Volume 5 of their Driving Local Investment in Black Arizona's report. It's the 5th volume of the State of Black Arizona series. You can download and review the report at stateofblackarizona.org. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce Lacey Lofton of the U.S. Census to talk about the result of the past census enumeration that occurred in 2020. Lacey, welcome to the
Very
program.
good. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you all for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think most of you have been very involved and certainly knew about the 2020 census happening. We're going to go through the basics of how that enumeration process took place, and then we'll walk through the results for Arizona and talk about a couple other data sources as well. So the decennial census is certainly the biggest game in town. We do it every 10 years and have been doing it since 1790. But it's a fairly small data set. It's used for reapportionment mainly, and then allocation of federal funds as well. There are really 5 data points that we take away from a decennial census, or from this decennial census. That's age, sex as well. We have race, which there are 5 different categories that can be chosen for race that we'll look at in just a little bit. We have ethnicity as well, which is a separate question and completely mutually exclusive. And that is, we're asking if people are of Hispanic or Latino origin or not. We have tenure as well. That's just, do you rent or own your home? So we can look at how people are living in an area when you're looking for redistricting. The decennial census is pretty much a 2-step process. It hasn't changed in the very fundamental ways a lot since 1790. It's in the Constitution that we identify every single place that we know people could or do live. And then it's our job to go out, and we're constitutionally required to get a response from each and every one of those households. For the 2010 census and then the 2020 census, we had a lot more partnership programs with local governments and so state, county, and then municipalities as well, so cities. One of the things that we did for 2020 that was different, and I think especially going into and seeing all the challenges we faced with the pandemic, we were very lucky that we gave every single functional government in the country an opportunity to review our address list going into the 2020 census. So we could agree on, okay, this is the list that the census has. This is where we're planning on enumerating. People signed off to make sure they kept it confidential, and we would go line by line and make sure that we had every address that the city or the county or the state did as well. So we are looking for places that people usually reside. That, for our definitions, means where you're living and sleeping most of the time on April 1st. So in theory, university students should be counted. If they're living at the university, they should be counted there. There are certainly some people, I'm in Texas, there are plenty of snowbirds that kind of come and go. I know you deal with that as well, but we're looking at where you're living and sleeping in the 2 months prior and the 2 months after. So that's how we define where you're living. For the census, we have a lot of unique populations as well. There are certainly people experiencing homelessness. We work really closely with cities and counties to identify places that people either live or gather. So if there are, temp camps under a bridge, if there is a shelter that's not a normal residence, but say it's a church or something, but does house people occasionally overnight, we will enumerate people there. And we also enumerate people where they are receiving services. So if there's a soup kitchen or some type of other facility where we can enumerate people that are gathering, we'll do that as well. And then obviously all those counts come back for apportionment. So let's look at how some of Arizona has changed from decade to decade. I tried to focus on maps to make it a little more interesting than just throwing up spreadsheets and kind of boring you with all the numbers. We certainly have all the numbers behind these as well, but I thought for this presentation, this would be a little more interesting. One of the things we were discussing just before we went live here is how much the Black or African-American community grew in Arizona over the past 10 years. So between 2010 and 2020, we saw an increase of 40.1% of the population who define themselves as either Black or African-American alone, or were Black or African-American and then another race as well. So you can see that Greeley County's leading the charge there with 69%, but almost every county had an increase in the population of people that identified as Black or African-American. One of the things we hopefully did a better job of this decennial census, and hopefully the last couple decades as well, is making sure people knew when they were filling out a census, what we were really asking. So we did more of an outreach effort to explain how the data was used and that you could choose as many races as you felt applied to you. So, we're trying to get people to identify who they are for us. We're not turning the corners and trying to argue one way or another. So hopefully we not only, definitely the country is getting more diverse, Arizona is also getting more diverse. And then hopefully in addition to that, we were able to capture a more accurate picture of how people identify this decennial census as well. We also have, next up, we have the ethnicity. And I know that this can be a little confusing for people when we're looking at the data that comes from the census, but race is one question. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But a separate question is, are you of Hispanic or Latino origin? That we call it origin or ethnicity for data purposes. You see here, Arizona has a major increase there as well. So we have 15.7% increase between 2010 and 2020. In the Hispanic or Latino population. Some people were a little surprised if you look at the data nationwide. North Dakota and I think South Dakota and then Montana actually had the largest percentage increase. And that was simply because the Hispanic and Latino populations there were relatively small. So it's much easier to double or triple, in certain areas. You already had a very large and thriving Hispanic or Latino population, but still saw an increase of 17.5%. Over on the left, it's broken down by county. I think you all know the area well enough. I don't think this is going to come as a shock to anyone. What I do want to point out is while these maps are showing at county level, because it's just kind of easier to see on a screen, we can give this information all the way down to the block level. So every single data point that we're showing right now and everything we're talking about is available down to that block level, and that's what you'll be using for redistricting. So we can tell you all this down to a lower level. Just for this presentation, we kept it higher. This is a screenshot of just some of the basic major findings from the 2020 census, and then also in comparison. So the first thing you'll see here, we have the United States, so they can compare it to Arizona and then Maricopa County, excuse me, as well. So it's always more interesting to look at percentages, especially when you've got kind of a baseline to compare it to. So first thing up, the population in Arizona grew pretty dramatically. So you can see there, we've got 7,151,000 people compared to 6,392. So a really major increase. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about, not gaining another seat. This is one of those things where it's a zero-sum game. So even though you did grow a lot, I know that there was a lot of disappointment about not gaining that extra seat, but you definitely had a large increase. If you look specifically at, the counties, there's a little bit of information here about counties and then changes in populations among different racial and ethnic groups. And then certainly we've got it broken down by Maricopa County here as well. Just, I know that that's kind of the focus was today. On top of the decennial census, we also have some other data sources that I do want to touch on. Oh, a couple more here. Let me touch on, so we have racial and ethnic diversity, and this is from the decennial census, but we also have some other surveys that we release annual data on. So this is specifically from the 2020 census. Arizona is really diverse, and it's kind of amazing that there was an increase in almost every county on diversity. So how we do this index is if you choose one person from the area and then you compare them to another person chosen at random, what are the odds that they will be different, either racially or from ethnicity standpoint? So you can look at where there is more diversity, county to county. Again, we have this data down to lower levels, and you can certainly see you live in a very diverse state. It's really cool to look at the changes as well. And here is a breakdown of the major race and ethnic prevalences by county from the 2020 census. And you can really look at what is the main racial makeup, or what is the largest racial group within each county. Again, we can do this down to any other level. Here are the 5 categories that the decennial census collects and then tabulates data for. So we have white, and then we have Black or African American. We have American Indian or Alaska Native. We have Asian, and then Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. Again, because people can choose as many categories as they feel apply to them, these numbers will never add up to 100%. And that's really confusing a lot of times. But here we have rankings by county of what percentage is the highest, and then second and third. And then we also have information, again, certainly down to a lower level, on how many people were of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 races, and then information on Hispanic or Latino as well. I'm sure there are going to be questions about this, and I'll look forward to answering those when we get to the Q&A section of this. So the American Community Survey is actually something that used to be part of the decennial census. All the way through 2000, this was 1 in 6 households got this really long questionnaire when everybody else was getting a shorter, the 5 or 6 questions every 10 years. Because we have computers now, and we have more of an infrastructure where we can actually collect, and then the biggest part is tabulate and produce this data. We're now producing all of this data every single year. And that's really awesome because, especially in an area that's changing as quickly as yours is, 8 years from now, this data from the decennial census is going to be really stale. So the good news is we are producing data. And unlike the decennial census, which just has those very few data points, the American Community Survey, we're producing data every year, and it tells you a lot about how people are living. So the decennial census is really there to tell you where people are living with some very basic information. The American Community Survey can give you a lot more information about how people are living. We produce this information down to the block group. So it's a slightly bigger area than we produce some of the numbers for redistricting, but it's really an area of only about 800 people. So you can really look into neighborhoods, you can look into even portions of neighborhoods and understand how things are changing and how they are. I'll go through these fairly quickly. I'll just point out some of the data points that sometimes confuse people the most. We have ancestry and citizenship. We have disability status. So we can tell you, and this is again, everyone is identifying for themselves. So it's not whether or not you have papers to say that you're disabled from a certain, from say the Department of Defense. It's if you feel that you have a disability that impacts your life. We have information on educational attainment. So we ask that of anyone over the age of 25, what is your highest level of education? And then we can also tell you what field of degree. I know healthcare was mentioned earlier in this presentation already. We can tell you not only if people have health insurance, but where they get it. So is it through work? Is it through a government program? You can look at how people are getting the health insurance. Grandparents, this is going to be a really interesting one when we release the data for 2020, because so many people during COVID kind of moved back in together, right? So we can tell you how many grandparents not only live with their grandchildren, but also how much of their everyday care they're in charge of. Fertility, we just have how many, what is the birth rate in an area? So has somebody had a child in the last 365 days in a very mathematical way to put it? Language, we've gotten a lot better at asking this question, and especially in an area that's so diverse like where you are, we're getting better at publishing this. We ask not only what language do you speak at home, but now we also ask, in addition to that, do you feel that you speak English well? So it might not matter as much, if somebody speaks Spanish at home, if they also feel that they speak English well. But if you have an area that speaks, Spanish, for example, and then there are pockets of community that they also don't feel they speak English well, that might be something you could use to make sure that you're reaching your constituents or communicating properly with your community. Marital status and history, place of birth. We have migration information. We can tell you, did the people that we surveyed live in the same house last year? If they did not, we can tell you if they lived in the same county. We can then tell you if they lived in the same state, in the same country. And then if the answer to all of those is no, then we can tell you which country they came from. Relationship is just how everybody within the household is related. So is it a married couple family? Is it roommates? Or whatever the living situation is there. We can tell you over the age of 3 who is enrolled in school, and then veteran status. So we'll tell you not only where veterans are, but also when they served and if they were ever deployed overseas. Next up, we have the economic section here, which is a little confusing. Usually I started out as an economist, so I always think of the economy as like business. These are the economic situations of households. So just employment and work status, and then income and earnings. So not only the cash you're taking home, but if you have health insurance or if you have a retirement plan, that'll be reflected here as well. Industry and occupation and class of worker, those are just subsets. We have information on commuting, so we can tell you how people are getting to and from work. Poverty status, and then SNAP recipients. We actually have some other federal programs that aren't listed here. I just kind of ran out of space, but we can tell you a lot about different sources of income and sources for resources of the community you're looking at. The demographic section here looks a little boring, right? It seems kind of redundant, but Every year for the American Community Survey, we will ask the exact same questions that we asked on the previous decennial census in the exact same way, so that you can always go back. And this baseline here, we just released, the last data we have released is 2019 ACS data. We're releasing the 2020 in November and December of this year, so coming out soon. But for the data we have now, we asked the questions the exact same way we did on the 2010 census. So you can always go back and say, okay, this is how we've changed over time. The housing section, I'm not going to spend as much time on. There are a lot of different organizations that use this. You can always reach out to me if this is something that's really near and dear to your heart. But I guess my main point here is not only do we have information about the population, we also have a lot of information about the housing stock. So we have a lot of information on heating fuel, probably not as big of a concern in Arizona as it sometimes is up north, but we can tell you about household size, kitchen facilities, occupancy and vacancies. So this is where you see those vacancy rates, from either a zip code or a city or a county. We can tell you what percentage of houses are just not occupied. We have owner characteristics, plumbing facilities. It's just basic stuff. Do you have toilets that work? Do you have running water? Do you have sewage? Race of householder. We have renter statistics, and just like the owner statistics, we can tell you not only who rents or owns their home, but also what percentage of their income they're spending on it. So if somebody is spending an area is, spending a lot of the percentage of their income to do basic housing, that might be an indicator of, well, it could be a lot of different things. It just depends on where you're looking and who you're looking at. Rooms and bedrooms, telephone service, which is going down kind of across the country. And then tenure again here just means, do you rent or own your home? Some basic information about units and structure. So is it a really large apartment complex? Is it a duplex, or is it a single family home? Vehicles available. This gets really important if you're looking to make sure people can get to, say, medical care or grocery shopping or even evacuation if necessary. This does not mean they own a vehicle. This means they have access to one. Then we also have information about when people moved and when the structure was built. So you can look at how mobile a population is using this data as well. Here are some, I just picked some, again, all of these data points are available for all the way down to a block group. So you can really do a serious analysis down to a really low level, but I just chose some that I thought would be interesting to look at kind of from this presentation on a high level. So this is one of my favorite tools. All of these tools are on our website. They're free, they're publicly available. This one is Census Business Builder. You can just Google it, it'll pull up for you. But what we're looking at here is by census tracts for your area. And we have the percentage of people that are Hispanic. And you can really see where the corridors are, right? So unfortunately, the key in the right corner of the legend didn't go all the way down. But you can see this darker purplish or maybe periwinkle color is where the largest concentration of people of Hispanic or Latino origin are. And then you can see how the bands kind of go out when you're getting further from the city, the center of the city. Next up, we have the percent of people living in poverty. Again, all of these can be cross-tabulated and looked at the city level, the county level, however it's best for you to look at this data. But you can see the percentage of families that are living in poverty, and this is defined as anybody who fell below the poverty, any household who fell below the poverty level in the last 12 months. So you can see how that distribution works, and certainly could be used to make decisions about outreach and things along those lines. I think we just have one more, not last but least, the percentage of people with a bachelor's degree or higher. So this is kind of the inverse, which is, you can look at, educational attainment. You could certainly do a study here on how that affects, poverty. You could chicken or egg that, but looking at where those distributions are as well. So the darker green areas, the higher, the lower percentage of people with a bachelor's degree or higher. And then as you go further down, you look at yellow, and then I think the next one is that periwinkle color again. I know I only have 1 minute left, so I won't, I'll leave this here. I know we're going to have a question and answer section at the very end. But certainly if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them if that's appropriate while we'll go through. And if not, I will turn over to my my other colleagues and panelists here and answer any questions towards the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lacey. Phenomenal information. Again, if you are in the audience, or if you have any questions for Lacey, now's the time to drop them in the chat. I am going to bring back President George Dean onto the broadcast. I'm sure he had a litany of questions. We'll give him the floor.
Yeah, I'm ready for him whenever you guys are.
Hey, George, you're on the mute.
Sorry about that.
There you are.
Okay, good. Lacey, we're still Arizona. That is still one of the fastest growing states in the country, as is what I'm told. And is that still the case? And if that is the case, what's the primary reason that we didn't get another congressional seat like so many of us was expected to get?
Yeah, and I can actually pull that up while some of the other panelists are speaking. I don't have that information right in front of me. Percentage change for the state. What I will say, and this is a conversation we have every decennial. You guys have had a lot of growth, and I've spent enough time in the area too. You see it year to year, but a lot of other areas have as well. And so it's a zero-sum game. I will definitely pull that up and I can drop it into the chat on what the percentage change was state by state. I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head, but that's usually what it comes down to. Is you guys have seen incredible growth, and a lot of people are moving to your area, which means you're doing a lot of things right. It's just there were some other areas that numbers wise, it just stayed even for you guys this decennial.
Okay, and the other question that I would have is the census also counts those undocumented individuals as well as
yeah,
legal
absolutely,
immigrants, right?
yeah. So we'll count anyone who is living and sleeping here. So it doesn't matter, and we don't ask. So if you are living and sleeping here, we'll say, "Are you living and sleeping here?" Great, and we'll enumerate you and geocode you to the block that you live in, whatever living situation that is. Why you're here has no impact on our count or how we run our operations. So yeah, absolutely, anybody living and sleeping in your area was counted and tabulated.
Mm-hmm. And my final question to you is,
Sure.
is that undercount, we heard about undercount and so forth. How great was it here in Arizona?
Yeah, so we haven't done that analysis yet. We are in the process of it. I'll say that. So we are in the process of it. For 2010, we actually had a slight overcount nationwide. What we do to analyze this is we'll actually send people back into the field with laptops and ask more in-depth questions of the same households, and then we'll do a comparison of how the data that we got from the census kind of works with this. It's I forget the name of it, but it's we change it every 10 years, but we do a follow-up survey. So we'll produce a really in-depth analysis from that. Certainly the biggest thing for this decennial, and I think the reason that we feel so confident in the numbers is we shared our address lists with local cities and municipalities. You guys have really, really good address lists. So if we went into this, agreeing on that list, it's our job to go enumerate, and we do that. We're required by the Constitution to get a response from each household. The challenges really come if, say, we missed it's a housing count thing. So if we somehow missed if our boundaries were wrong, that's something that we would adjust. So say we had the boundaries for a county wrong, we would correct those and retabulate. But certainly with we work specifically with highest elected officials for those challenge programs, and anyone can reach out to me and we can certainly walk through the process and look at the data and see where there might be places to have those conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Lacey, thank you once again for your time and sharing part of your day with us. This is important information, and you clearly have a grasp on the data. And
I've been doing it a few years, so hopefully, yes.
No, and if you can stick around, if you are able
Absolutely.
to kind of come back and drop that information in the chat, we'd love to get that communicated with the audience.
Okay, real quick, there was a question and I apologize. There was a question. I think if I can take 2 minutes to touch on it, the zero-sum game. So when the House, the number of seats were frozen for the House of Representatives, it's even if you guys, if the state increases in numbers, if somebody else does as well, another state does relatively, there actually was a long period of time where we were adding congressional seats based on the population numbers. But now it's just reapportioning those seats. So if somebody else, even if you have a really massive growth, if the rest of the country is too, you wouldn't necessarily gain a seat. That's what I meant by zero-sum game. So thank you for that question. I apologize if that wasn't clear.
Thank you, Lacey, for taking the next step to clarify that question. And
yes.
Thank you, Monica Vanderwerf, for the question. So we appreciate your engagement. Lacey, once again, I'll let you go, but we look forward to from you continuing to chime in through the rest of the broadcast. Next, we would like to introduce Marie Chapel Camacho from the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. Marie,
Hi,
welcome
thank
to the
you.
broadcast.
Thank you, Jerry. I am a community outreach coordinator working for the commission. And what the commission does is they draw new lines for the 9 congressional districts and the 30 state legislative districts in Arizona. So I want to thank the Greater Phoenix Urban League for inviting us on here. So the one thing I want to talk about, thank you, is where we've been, who we've talked to so far. The commission has been around the state. We have been in cities and towns, large and small, and we've been in all 15 counties. People have been able to participate in person and remote, and in these days, remote is very, very important. And so, and we've done a number of outreaches to municipal staff, tribal staff, minority representing organizations. So we want as many people who are interested to join in. And at our meetings, we have sign language interpreters and Spanish interpreters to help them understand what's being said during the meetings and help them participate. So what is reapportionment versus redistricting? This is a question a lot of people ask, because reapportionment basically is after the census is done, we use the census data. Well, the census tells us how many seats Arizona gets in the U.S. House of Representatives. There's 435 seats. They get divided among the states. Everybody gets at least one. So Arizona is sticking with its 9 seats. We didn't get that extra 10 that everybody was looking forward to. So redistricting is basically drawing the lines. And that's what this commission does. It's drawing the lines for those 9 congressional districts and 30 state legislative districts. So how did this district come into be? It's through Proposition 106. So in 2000, if we can move along to the next thank you, slide. In 2000, there was a voter-approved Proposition 106, which changed the power of doing the redistricting from the state legislature to this independent redistricting commission. There's 5 commissioners that are on the commission, and they're the ones who make the decisions about the lines. So this is the 3rd time we've met. In 2001, 2011, and now in 2021, the commission is now meeting and still meeting. Today it was having a decision-making meeting about the line. So it is ongoing, and they will draw the new boundaries. So we have a timeline that's ongoing right now. We hope to get this final map in December. That's the goal. So we've done a number of public meetings. So right now what the commission is doing is called a decision-making meeting. And I can talk about the grid maps. I'll talk about them in a little bit. But what they are doing right now is adjusting the grid maps. So for the mapping process, there are 4 stages. And so we have the grid maps of equal population. We have the grid map of adjusted to 6 criteria, which is, I can show you that list in the next slide. And then there's the draft map and the final district boundaries. So right now we have concluded phase 1, which is the grid maps of equal populations. A lot of people thought those were the maps. Those weren't the maps. Those were the initial maps. And so what the commission is now doing is adjusting it for the 6 criteria which are mandated in the Arizona State Constitution. So if we could show that slide where it shows the grid maps of equal population, the next one, there we go. So this is concluded, but we have the grid map overlaid by the county line so people could kind of have a point of reference, but all those big blobs of color basically represent the same number of people. So you'll see that big blue area and that small, if you look in the center, red area, they have the same amount of population. And so that is mandated by Arizona Constitution that we create these maps as our initial maps to work from. So now what the commission is doing is looking at the 6 goals in the Arizona Constitution. And of the 5 of the 6, the criteria allows to the extent practicable, which means possible. So this is what the commission is doing. They're meeting now. People are able to participate. You can watch it remote, or you can even go in person to where they are and watch it happen. But the 6 criteria that they need to meet. The first one is compliant with the U.S. Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. So the Voting Right Act protects the right of minority voters to participate in the electoral process. So that's one of the criteria. The next one is equal population. So again, to the extent practicable. So that means that there can be some deviation, you have to get down to the, one person difference. So in the next slide, we can see the equal populations, and there we go. So that's kind of the idea of what we want as much as possible. So the next one is a geographical based criteria, which is compact and contiguous. So compact has to do, once again, with geography, and there's several approaches to what compact means. So yeah, I illustrated with a very tight bale of hay, but it really means, it really discusses, or it really speaks to the shape of the district. The contiguous talks about everything has to be touching. So just like a stack of boxes, they may not have to be perfectly stacked, but they are all touching. So that kind of gives you an idea of what that particular criteria is going for. And then the other one is respect community of interest. So what is a community of interest? It could be a geographic area which is comprised of people who have common social or economic interests, they share characteristics or experiences, or similar issues and impacts of government policies. So we had a number of people speak to this as we were doing some of our outreach, and there is a community of interest report that has been developed. It's now on our website, but that doesn't mean that you can't continue to tell the commission when you, comment on the maps of your community of interest. So they're still interested in hearing from you about how people that you live near should be kept in a particular district and the reasons why for that. Then the next one is also geographic. It's using visible geographic features, cities, towns, and county boundaries in undivided census tracts. So what it's trying to do is trying to avoid divvying up cities so that they are represented by multiple, elected officials. It's not completely unavoidable, but they're just saying, to the extent possible, try not to divide up these political subdivisions in your state. And then there's competitiveness. So that is that one. It speaks to creating competitive districts when it makes no significant detriment to other goals. And how that is decided, once again, a lot of this criteria is based on what the commission decides, the balances should be. So once they are finished with adjusting the grid map with these 6 criteria, or you should say goals, they come up with an adopted draft map, which triggers the 30-day public comment period. So when that happens, we start advertising these draft maps. And we say 2 because you're going to have one for congressional, you're going to have one for the state legislative. So it has to be at least 30 days public comment period. And then at this point, the state legislature can weigh in, and they can make recommendations to our commission. So this is considered phase 3. So we have 3, and then the next one is our 4th and final phase, in which they establish the final district boundary. So after the 30-day public comment period, the commission establishes the final district boundaries, and then it certifies the new districts to the Secretary of State. So that's phase 4. But I do want to make another point about the 30-day comment period. One of the things that we're asking people is going to happen in November. And we've had people say, well, we think that you should come over to this community. We think it's very important that you hear from them. And we would like to have those suggestions from you. But keep in mind, we've had COVID restrictions so that sometimes there are facilities that will only allow 10 people in. So we do need facilities that will accommodate, a larger amount of people, but we really do welcome your suggestions as to where we should go and maybe what facility to use. So then the next thing to talk about is how to participate. And we have links in our webpage on how to view, draw, and comment on the maps that are now being considered by the commission. And Jerry, could you take us to that particular slide? Thank you. So these are the links that you can go to. The Redistricting Hub, you can look at the maps without creating an account. So that's what the Redistricting Hub is. Look at what we're doing. You don't have to create an account. But if you yourself would like to create a map and submit it to the commission, you can go to what's called the Redistricting system, make an account. You can watch videos that shows you how to use the software. It's kind of challenging, but a lot of people are enjoying it. So you can use the software and submit a map to us, or you can also take a look at somebody else's map in that has already submitted, and you can say, I like that map. I want you to know that I like that map, and submit that to us with your comments. And then to post a comment. So a lot of people don't want to use the software. We can understand that. They just want to let us know what they think. So you also can post your comments. And I will have to warn you to be very careful about this one, because a lot of people think this is an email to the staff that if you just want to generally ask us a question. These two particular links will, your comments will be posted to the web. So contact us at any time and you can post a comment, or you can, during the IRC meeting, comment via online, and comment during the commission's meeting, and just during that period of time. So you can have two ways of doing that. Then lastly, if you want to send us an email, then we have a direct email that's on the next slide, or you can give us a call, or even our address is on this slide. We're at 110 West Washington, Suite 127, Phoenix, Arizona 85007. Some people have mailed us their comments, or even drawn out their own map if they don't want to use the system software online, and just send that to us. So I thank you for inviting us to be on here. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate those who want to participate. So please, anybody, if you have a voice in this, and please participate.
Thank you, Marie. Again, phenomenal information. It's again vital. It's shaping the demographics. It's shaping our economy. It's shaping our politics in the state of Arizona. So out in the public, this is one of the things that is so important, and most of the public just doesn't. I would say most of the public just doesn't know what's happening or the importance of it. So I think that we're happy to be able to provide the platform in order for you to share that. I'm gonna bring President George Dean back onto the program. I'm sure he has a couple of questions that he would like to ask. If you are out in the public, if you are watching, streaming in, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. We'll get those answered.
Okay. Thank you, Marie, for that information that you provided us with. That was very good. But my question is, since we did not get an additional seat, and although the population has grown, why can't the congressional districts remain the same? Why does it have to be redistricted?
Well, one, they have to draw new lines. It's mandated by the Constitution. But even though the population is growing in our state, where is it growing? You have areas that 10 years ago had very little population. Now they have a lot. And so you need to take those into consideration. And so one of the criteria is to use population to develop the maps.
And are we still operating under the theory of one man, one vote, or one person, one vote, I should say?
So good. You know that. Yes, that is, that's you have the equal populations because you want to have as many people represented by one person. So you kind of have like your equal share of the pie, each of the people in that person's district. So it kind of translates into one person, one vote.
Okay, and so what do you do? Take the population and divide it by 9, or the total population? Or how do you come up with that formula?
Actually, it's pretty simple math that way. Yes, that is, but there can be deviations because remember, one of the things that they say is to the extent practicable, possible. There may be times when you're going to have to deviate in population because of another criteria might, balance something else out. So they do have the ability to deviate in population. But but to the extent practicable, that you want equal population in each
So
of the.
Marie, so one question, is there a hierarchy or priority to the different criteria that you outlined earlier?
There's not, even though it's a list, there's not a hierarchy, it's a balance, and that's what the commission decides. They decide what that balance is. So, and that's what they're doing right now. They're making those decisions on moving the lines around. It's their decision-making time. They're adjusting the grid map to create a draft map that they'll take out to the public, and once again, get more public comment on what we're doing.
Got it. So speaking of the commission, we have a question from the audience, again from Monica Vanderwerf. And she asks, how are the 5 commissioners chosen? Are the 5 the same as since 2000 when the commission was formed? I assume your staff added every 10 years for this activity. I assume you have the staff added every 10 years for that activity.
Right. Actually, the commission, once it's done, it goes away until it's reformed 10 years. So it's not a continuing, a commission in perpetuity. So the, and I'll have to get this right, it is the commission on the appellate court appointments that decide who basically gets to be a commissioner. So there is a process, and it is the appellate court appointments. I'm trying to read my own handwriting. I'm sorry that they take nominations. They decide on the 4 commissioners that are of a political party, and those 4 commissioners choose an independent as the chair.
Okay.
Got it, Marie.
That answers your question.
And Monica, thank you again for the question. We hope that you have had it answered. Marie, if you are able to stick around for a little bit longer, I'm sure we'll get some more questions pouring in towards the tail end of the broadcast. But if not, we thank you for your time and your energy and your expertise. The links that you have provided to me, I will get those posted in the chat. So if you're looking to visit the database, and draw your own maps and tinker around with that a bit, you'll come back to the chat. The link will be listed within there. In addition to that, we posted the link to the census data table that Lacey shared earlier. So feel free, again, arm yourself with the tools that we've collected for you all. So, figure out where to get engaged. So Marie, thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks. I'll stick around.
Again, that was Marie Chapel Camacho with the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission doing the very important work of redrawing our electoral maps. With that being said, we are going to segue into our panel discussion. Just bear with me for one moment because this stuff is happening in real time. So I made the mistake of trying to go from memory and not actually reading the information I had before me. So I just have to deeply apologize to Estee Amane, Executive Director and Policy Minister for Black Political Cultivation Z. Estee, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Now, before we introduce the next guest, I would just like to give you an opportunity, just, kind of read your bio, tell us, audience, about who you are and the work that you do.
Sure. So again, Estee Amane, my pronouns are they, them. I am the co-executive director and policy minister at Black Political Cultivation Arizona. We are a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2020. And I come into this role as an organizer, as a creative, as a policy expert. And at this organization, what we are doing is trying to transform the quality of life for Black people and people of other marginalized identities here in Arizona. And we're doing that through policy advocacy. We are doing that through electoral engagement and community activation. So obviously we're paying attention to this information about the population change and the redistricting process, because we know this is an area where Black people have either the potential to be enfranchised or ignored. And we want to make sure people are aware of this process and its importance. So this is really, really exciting work that's pertaining to really critical issues in the everyday lives of Black Arizonans. So really excited to discuss this tonight.
Estee, thank you again. Looking forward to diving into the conversation. We know you are well informed, and it was important for us to get you on the broadcast so you can share this dearth of experience and knowledge that you have with our audience. So looking forward to it. Next, I would like to introduce Jevin Hodge, who's the National Engagement Director for Link Strategic Partners and the President of the Booker T. Washington Child Development Center, among a whole bunch of other things that we are hoping that he takes the opportunity to tell you about. Jevin, welcome to the broadcast.
Jerry, President Dean, thank you all for having me today. It's a great honor to be joined here, one by the esteemed panelists that I have the honor to share stage with here, two with you all here at the Greater Phoenix Urban League, and three with our audience. Thank you to all the viewers that are tuning in today. Your participation matters. Civic engagement is important, and so grateful to have you all a part of this. Little brief overview of who I am, Jevin Hodge. I'm an Arizona native, born and raised here, son of Berdetta Hodge. I serve as the National Engagement Director for Link Strategic Partners, a social impact firm, internationally recognized, that operates in a nexus of where community engagement meets communication. We help organizations, school districts, nonprofits, government agencies solve their most pressing problems. And I'm so fortunate to have the opportunity to work on initiatives around the country that are directly impacting our communities. And we're doing everything possible to move our communities forward. In addition to that, I am the president of the longest running Head Start in the state of Arizona, the Booker T. Washington Child Development Center. It's a great honor, greatest honor in my life to serve as the proud president here. Founded by Mr. Calvin C. Good, an Arizona legend and a mentor of mine, and I'm grateful to step in and serve in leadership there. And I'm running for the United States Congress, currently in Arizona's 6th Congressional District, which is North Phoenix, Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, Fountain Hills, the Salt River Pima community, and the Fort McDowell Yavapai community. We, as you heard tonight, are undergoing the redistricting process. And so the lines will change. The district will look different. But I'm excited to get out there and exercise the opportunity to engage folks so that they can participate civically and to be a true champion, to stand up and fight for our most disenfranchised and vulnerable communities, and to be a voice for the voiceless, so that we can have policy that works for the people, not against the people, so that we can do everything humanly possible to stand up and fight for protecting our right to vote, to stand up and fight for investing in education, protecting and expanding access to healthcare, investing in our infrastructure and growing the economy so that it works for us and not against us. And so really excited for this conversation tonight. Jerry, thank you for having me, and I look forward to being alongside our fellow panelists. Thank you.
Jevin, again, we're excited to have you. Thank you for joining us. I know you reached out to your team. You had a couple of other commitments, so we're happy that you were able to join us for the discussion today. So looking to get into it. I am going to bring back President George Dean to the discussion. We're going to make sure he stays involved in the conversation, just get his years of wisdom and insight and experience into the shifting demographics of Arizona. George, welcome back.
All right, thank you. Devin and Esty, thank you both for once again for agreeing to appear on this panel. But Esty, I'd like to start with you. How long have your organization been operating here in Arizona?
So my organization is Black Political Cultivation Arizona, and we were formed in 2020 as a response to everything happening around the 2020 election, recognizing the need for Black voices to be standing up with that election. So we've been around for a year.
Mm-hmm. Do you and what do you think in terms of Black participation and so forth? One of the things we do in the Urban League is we went all out last year in terms of getting people to vote. We wanted to get them registered and get them voted and get them to the polls and so forth. How do you see that as a problem, or what's your thoughts on that?
There will always be more people who need to be registered to vote. There will always be more potential Black voters who aren't participating, either because of awareness or because of deliberate voter suppression, until we have automatic voter registration. So we're always going to need to do more registration, always going to need to do the work of educating and informing and engaging voters who previously haven't been engaged. there will always be that opportunity, and the work will always need to be done to get Black people participating in elections.
Okay. And Jevin, I don't know that have you been an elected official in any other capacity, or is this your first one?
I served as the vice chairman of the Arizona Democratic Party, where I was the youngest statewide Black official in the United States of America. I represented all 1.5 million Democrats in the state of Arizona. And in 2020, I ran for the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, where I narrowly lost in the last race to be decided in the state of Arizona. Out of 475,000 votes cast, I lost by 403. And so I have served my community, and I have not served in officially elected office, but we're continuing to push forward.
Go.
Any particular reason why you chose District 6?
We have a great opportunity to win the seat here. And so this is the community that raised me. I'm from the East Valley, and we have an incredibly vulnerable member currently in the seat right now. And we need leaders that are going to be on the forefront, fighting for our nation's most pressing issues. And so this is a great opportunity here for the state to move forward with having individuals that are going to advance policy that is going to be best for our community.
Okay.
Thank you, Jevin. Thank you, Esty. We'll go ahead and get into the questions that we have today. If you are out in the audience, please, we want to hear from you. We want you involved in the conversation. If you have a question, drop it in the chat. If you're thinking about a question, write it down. We don't want you to forget it. And if you got to rework, got to rethink your question, please, we want you engaged. We talk about the census today. We talk about redistricting, but the important part, most out of everything else, is that you absorb this and you engage yourself to further empower our community. So please be encouraged to drop your questions. And we'll start with Esty. And we were just talking about redistricting, so we'll stay on that topic. How important is it that our community gets involved in this process? What are the implications if they do not?
Sure, thank you. So becoming engaged in the redistricting process is extremely vital. This represents an opportunity for Arizonans to become aware of and use our political power. But there's also the concern of whether we're deliberately or accidentally being diluted or erased in the count, in the districts that are drawn. Arizona has a particularly strong history when it comes to dilution and erasure of Black history and Black communities. And so we need to combat that. We need to make sure that our voices are heard, that our communities are seen, because regardless of whether we are being seen and we're being considered in these rooms where decisions are made, we're still going to be impacted by the decisions that the commission makes, as well as our statewide leaders, our federal representatives. We're impacted by all of these policy decisions that are made. And so we need to make sure that these leaders understand our communities are here, that we have opinions, that there's diversity among the Black community, that we have a diversity of needs. So it's definitely important to engage in this process. It's happening right now. These meetings are happening frequently. There's different maps being proposed, different community concerns being heard and debated. And so we have to make sure that we are present and considered and strongly coming into that conversation, because the impact will happen in our communities based on the decisions that are made and the maps that are confirmed.
Thank you, Esty. We'll shoot it right over to Jevin. Same question.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry, for proposing the question. And Esty is doing some incredible work for our community, and so I ditto everything that she's saying. It's vitally important that you voice your opinion, to be involved in the process. And when we talk about redistricting, I'm running for the United States Congress, and it's at the forefront of my mind. But Congress is not the only jurisdiction that's being redistricted right now, and so all of our lines will be completely redrawn. And so it's important that we make sure that the lines at the legislature are competitive, so that we can have competitive representation, and so that we can have equal representation in the Arizona State Legislature. In addition to that, following the drawing of the federal and the state lines, the counties will go through their redistricting process. And it's so important that you exercise your opinions now, so that when the counties are drawing their lines, it's important that they have your voice for the supervisory districts and the school board districts and everything else. And so to echo what Estee said, it is so important, because your representation matters, your voice matters, and we want to make sure that there is not just only one side of the conversation being heard or represented in the process. And so making sure that you're exercising your voice to speak out in favor of having competitive districts, to speak out in favor of having fairly drawn districts, to speak out in favor of making sure that all people are incorporated in the process when this is being done, is not only just going to benefit you in the moment, but is going to benefit the entire state of Arizona and the future of the state of Arizona as well, because these lines are set in place for the next decade, but also will dictate who's in leadership, right? Because if a district's not competitive, there won't be a competitiveness of thought that is brought into the election, and then only one side would be involved in the conversation. So we need to make sure that we have fully competitive districts, so that we can have representation that's going to fight for our states and nation's most pressing issues in their respective governing body.
Thank you, Jebin. And again, I'm sorry. Again, in the audience, if you have questions, you have to drop them in the comment section. I got a couple of people emailing me questions to ask, and that's not I guess that's not the way to go about it. Just drop it in the comment section. We'll get it on the screen. We'll get your questions asked. And Jebin will start this next question with you. And just wondering, prior to the census, as we discussed earlier today, there was an expectation that with the growth of Arizona, we would pick up an additional House seat. How much do you think the pandemic and the apathy related to completing the census, how much do you think it's cost how much do you think it's cost Arizona this pivotal seat?
Well, we know for starters, it's going to cost Arizona trillions of dollars in federal funds over the next decade. And so like President Dean, I have the honor to lead a health early childhood center that is a Head Start program, right? That is based off of the allocation of folks that we have, right? It's based off the community needs assessment. And so because of the undercount, we as Arizonans are going to miss out on a tremendous amount of investment. And yes, the pandemic played a favor. Yes, there are other factors that played a favor, but ultimately, we did not have elected leaders that fought for the allocation of resources to get the job done. This falls onto the backs of the governor. This falls onto the backs of the elected representation here in the state and the legislature, because they didn't fight for the resources to move forward. There was minimal amount of dollars that were allocated to doing the outreach that was needed to reach our communities and our most disenfranchised and oppressed communities. But there wasn't an allocation of resources to get the job done. And so now Arizonans in the future of Arizona has to suffer as a result of it. And so, we are living in a very pivotal point in history right now. And that goes back to the last topic that we talked about. If we are not engaging in the process at the IRC and while the lines are being redrawn, expressing the importance of competitiveness, we will continue to have elected leaders in place that is not going to advocate for the best interest of Arizonans and the future of Arizona.
I could not have said it better. I could not have said it better. And here at the Greater Phoenix Urban League, we were active for the whole 2020 year to try to get the word out and increase engagement and increase awareness, and having census drives and having meetings where folks just got together to complete the census to make sure it was done. But unfortunately, we know that there's been a number of people who just simply were not counted during the census, and we're gonna have to pay the price for the next 10 years. And with that being said, we need to be mindful to get ready for the next census coming up. But Estee, would you like to chime in on that, or maybe even speak to any other things that you may think have contributed to the undercount?
Sure, I can say a little bit more. I think that Jevin encapsulated the issue very well. It's a matter of resources. The immense cost that we're going to feel is the resources that will come into our community from the federal level. So that's something to be concerned about because we need an accurate count of our community. Decision makers need that accurate count to accurately decide what what to send to our community, and that will be felt in our everyday lives. It's all kinds of monies to different issues, programs like the one that Jevin mentioned, but also, climate policy, health policy, so many different things. We'll see what exactly that impact is. And if we're under resourced, that will be really, really problematic. As to the question of the impact of the pandemic, I think our earlier presenters from the U.S. Census, as well as the Redistricting Commission, kind of explained how the pandemic led to an undercount, and we're not sure what the extent of that undercount is. As for the question of apathy, I don't feel that our community members were necessarily apathetic in 2020 about engagement in the census or engagement in the 2020 election. I think that many organizations such as yours, such as mine, many organizations here were dedicated and passionate about getting people engaged and expressing and illustrating the importance of participation in these two events. But I think that rather than apathy, we might have some community members, some voters who are feeling frustrated about the political process, frustrated that our federal government can't get something right as simple, maybe in theory, as just counting us, just making sure that we're here and trying to understand our needs. So as organizations that are trying to keep people engaged and make change, we need to address that potential frustration, explain what's happening, why things are happening, and translate that frustration into energy and illustrate to people, this is the power you have as an individual and as a community member to address the government, to explain, to get engaged, and to impact the decisions that are made. So that's my understanding of kind of how people are feeling about this situation and the potential cost that we're going to feel in our community.
Right. I hope you look around. You got everyone nodding their head in affirmation of your response to that. There was a lot going on in 2020, but between and maybe I'm just hooked onto the word apathy for some reason, but just that discouragement feeling from the government, that obviously is something that would impact someone's desire to get involved. I did want to stay with you, Estee, on the next question. And earlier today, we learned, at least for me, it was some surprising data that the Black population in Arizona grew by 40% from 2010. I was blown away when I heard that stat, and I guess all the panelists can attest to that. We know that you work directly with and for advocating for the Black community. So just asking you, what does the population growth amongst the Black community in Arizona actually look like in our state?
Sure, thank you. So firstly, we believe that Arizona is Blacker than it's ever been. And that's something to celebrate. Black Arizonans are a vibrant, diverse, and resilient group of people. We're residing in nearly every community. Obviously, there's some strongholds, some concentrations of Black people in various counties, but we really are everywhere, and we've been everywhere throughout Arizona's history. In terms of like the political implications of our population growth, we see in our elected leadership in this state that it doesn't necessarily match that population growth. So that gap is something that needs to be investigated and addressed. For example, the list of Black elected officials in our state is way shorter than would be proportional. And that's totally independent of any party membership. Now, the decisions made by these elected officials impact our everyday lives. So, for example, can we get to our jobs safely and on time so that we can pay our bills and feed our families? That depends on the government decisions about designing and caring for our roads and public transportation, and then wages, and then policies about regulating workplace safety and protecting against discrimination, and so on. All of the decisions are made by our elected leadership. You could say that if our elected leadership doesn't look like us, they could still make decisions that kind of match our needs and our experiences, but it's still fantastic to have not only elected leadership, but like just government staff, people who actually execute the decisions that the government makes. They at least need to have direct lived experience in our communities. So we need to translate the population growth, which is really, really, really exciting, into actual leadership, actual representation, actual execution of what it's like to live in the state as a Black person, translated into government policy and decisions.
Thank you, Estee. Audience, we have only 15 minutes until the broadcast is over. I know this time has flown by, at least from my perspective. But if you have any questions, you need to get them in the chat now. There was one question that came in from the audience. I have I have an additional prepared question, and then we'll segue into the audience questions. And this question is for Jevin, we know data. In regards to the census, the data is people mean dollars. Just want to get your perspective on what do you think the outlook on the growth of Arizona will sort of impact will it have economically on the state?
Yeah, so Arizona's population growth is going to have tremendous economic impact on the economic state of Arizona. So just think about it like this. If we have more people here and there's more people spending dollars, more people generating dollars, that is more individuals that will be contributing to the economy. However, to echo Este's sentiments that was just previously mentioned, we need to have leaders in place that is going to craft policy, advocate for policy, and pass policy that is going to be one, reflective of the needs of the community, and two, that is going to be for and pro people, that is going to move forward so that we can continue to advocate advance economic interests. Because if we're not having policy in place that is going to support stimulating the economic state of Arizona, i.e. raising the minimum wage, expanding opportunities like such, we're not going to be able to expand opportunities like home ownership, for example. And so, we need to make sure that while the population growth is great for us, we need to make sure that we have the policy that is paired for that. And it's not just about economic specific focus policy, it's investing in healthcare and making sure that we have the protections, because a healthy society is a productive society. It's investing in education, and not just K-12 education, but early childhood education in our institutions of higher learning, and expanding workforce programming so that we can have an educated workforce. An educated workforce is a productive society. And so when you think about this, it's making sure that we're doing everything to put people first, that we have the protections in place and the support in place, so that we can uplift our communities, so that our communities can continue to contribute economically to the state as at large.
Thank you once again, Jevin, for that very detailed and clear answer. We are coming up close to time again. I want to make sure everyone gets involved and get their questions answered. I'm going to start pulling questions from the audience. So if I guess the panelists are going to be ones to answer it. We'll get those questions coming from the audience. And after this question, George, if you want to jump in with any of your follow-up questions, please feel free to do so. Let me get this one question from the audience, and then we'll yield the floor to any questions you may have. And this question comes again from Monica Vanderwerf. Monica, we're going to have to send you a gift. Like, your level of engagement, phenomenal. Well, I would say maybe the best we've had, but we've had some pretty engaged audiences in the past. But nonetheless, realizing the pandemic issue on the census, looking back, does the panel feel the 2011 redistricting was fair, or did it miss the mark? Are the concerns that they may be addressed pointed out in the current conversation with the commission? in short, do you all think the results of the redistricting in 2011, do you think it was fair, or did it miss the mark? And are they, I guess, the opportunity to correct it going forward?
Estee, do you want to take it? If not, I'll jump in. So when you look at the 2011 redistricting process, is going to be one that's going to be studied for generations. And the reason why I say that, you look at Congressional District 9, for example, that those district lines were upheld in court, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And if you look at the history of those lines, that district started out as I believe a Republican +2 district. And now the district, same exact lines, is a Democrat +15 or 12. And so what I believe, right, and what we've seen is that it accounted for population shift and population growth. And so the districts were drawn for the moment, right, to meet the population needs for the moment. But also, as you've seen, you saw the evolutionary shift over time. And so there's lots of lessons to be learned from the process. We saw at that point in time record high engagement for folks participating in the redistricting process and commenting on the process with the IRC and everything else that goes along with that. There's lessons to be learned from that. But there's also lessons that take away that Arizona's ideological mindset, demographical subset, geographical subset is shifting rapidly. And so if there's anything that the 2011 redistricting process taught us, is that as we look at it retrospectively, is that we must be prepared for rapid shift. To see how you look at Legislative District 18, for example, it made a complete ideological shift over time. There's so many examples like that across the map. You look at Congressional District 1, the largest congressional district in the country. That's a single member district that's not a state, that represents lots of rural Arizona and in several indigenous communities within that, that made a huge ideological shift over the course of the last 10 years. And so, and that's been reflective in the representation, everything else. And I think it's just being, the number one lesson is to be very mindful of the current dynamics and what is to come. But we also have to understand that the IRC is drawing the lines for the moment, not for the future. And so just looking back and studying it is always going to be the best notion of how we can grow and learn from the process.
Thank you much, President Dean. Did you have any question for our panelists? I believe you're muted. George, you're still muted.
Oh, this mute and unmute kind of thing. Okay. I don't have any questions, Jerry, but I do want to say to both Estes and to Jevin that you're very impressive young people that standing for something that is good and that's going to make the future better for all of us, So keep doing what you're doing and keep the fight, keep the faith, and hey, we'll just make it happen. That's what I say. So congratulations to both of you for what you're doing. And Jevin, you got a big bite, but you're certainly capable of handling it, I believe. So go for it.
Awesome. And Jevin is definitely prepared for the fight. I've seen him in action. So we do not have any further questions from the audience. We will give our panelists a few moments for some final thoughts, and we'll start with Esty.
Thank you. And thank you, President Dean, for your encouragement and your compliments. I'm really glad and excited to be doing this kind of work because I recognize in my personal life, why this matters. I see our elected leadership at the state level, at the federal level, either, hopefully trying to advocate for myself and people like me and the people I care about, or passing policies that directly harm me and my community. So I recognize in my own life the impact those kinds of decisions can have. But, personally, and in the work that I do, that is why I recognize that we need to demand great candidates for local public office who match our values and who are going to fight for policy that will improve our lives. Now, to get those great candidates, we need to identify talented and motivated individuals in our community and open their mind up to the possibility of running for office. We need to give them the community encouragement, the resources to get in there, to seize power, and to make change so that the government are caring for us instead of causing harm to us. I don't want it to be here anymore. And honestly, you know, I think Jevin has checked off some boxes for some firsts in terms of being a Black candidate and, you know, how much success he had in 2020. But I don't want him to be alone out there. I want there to be multiple Black candidates for congressional seats and for legislative seats because we're out here. The potential talent and passion is out here in the community. We just need to bridge the gap from getting people to just being disconnected from politics to recognizing its importance and the role it plays in our everyday lives, and then encouraging those people to get into leadership. And that's why I do what I do. So I think there's a lot of potential for more success to happen in the next upcoming election years in 2022 and 2024. It's about redistricting, it's about population growth, it's about congressional races, it's about school board races. School boards are where we see a lot of the white supremacy coming out recently, but also at our state legislature. There's a lot going on, but I think that there is enough potential talent in our Black community in Arizona to step up and meet those issues and actually get into power and make some decisions that are going to transform quality of life for our community. So I'm really motivated and I'm really excited and glad to be working with all of you on that.
Thank you so much, Esther. We're looking forward to more of the work and more of the opportunities that you create for Black Arizonans. We're looking forward to it. Devin, would you like some closing thoughts?
For starters, thank you so much for having me on tonight. It is a great honor to be here with you all as a former board member of the Greater Phoenix Urban League Young Professionals. I always love doing everything possible to support an organization that's very near and dear to my heart. And so just thank you so much for having me, Jerry. It's a great honor to be in the fight with you, Jerry, to be in the fight with you, Estee. You know, it's we're doing everything possible to move our communities forward. And like Estee said, you know, we do need more representation in our government. We need more Black candidates running for office, and we need to support them with our time, our talent, or our treasure when they do run for office. My mother always says, my mother's the first Black woman elected in the city of Tempe. She always says that I may be the first, but I promise you I won't be the only or the last. And that's what we need to do. That's how we're going to move forward and do everything possible to protect our communities and to have policy in place that's going to support our communities. And I'm honored to stand on the shoulders of giants like you, Mr. Dean, and Calvin Good, and several others in our community that have been on the front lines for a long time, fighting the good fight for our people. And so I'm really excited and motivated to continue to push forward. My ask of the audience tonight is to continue to push, to continue to challenge, and to continue to be involved civically. And civic engagement is voting, yes, but it's also organizing, and it's getting out there and speaking truth to power and supporting candidates that represent your interests, that are moving, that are fighting to be representatives in elected office. And so get involved, continue to stay involved, and we will see a representation in our government that's going to be for our people. So again, it's a great honor to be here with you all tonight. Thank you so much. Estee, thank you so much for your comments tonight. It's a great honor to be beside you, and I look forward to everything that's to come.
Thank you once again, Estee and Jevin, for your time, energy, expertise. We are greatly appreciative of the work that you each do in the community, respectively, as well as being able to come on a broadcast and talk directly to our audience and our community members. So we are greatly appreciative of you. Last but not least, I would like to yield the floor to President George Dean to close us out for the day.
And I would just say this has been a very interesting and informative conversation that we've had this evening. And we'll see you next month. on Meet the Leaders. Be safe, get vaccinated. If you haven't been, get vaccinated, get the booster. If you haven't had it already, stay safe. We'll see you next month on Meet the Leaders.